Some people think they can bully others without consequences. But when you target someone who's already survived something far worse than your petty insults, you might find out what real consequences look like. This is the story of how my coworker tried to get me fired over breast implants. But I didn't just defend myself. I pulled out a reverse card she never saw coming and got her fired instead. 4 years ago, when I was just 24, I lost my mom to breast cancer. Both of my grandmothers had also died from it. So, I got tested, and doctors found precancerous cells in one of my breasts. I was given options: get screened every few months and hope for the best, have one breast removed and monitor the other, or go full bilateral mastectomy and eliminate the risk. I chose the most drastic option: both breasts removed. They warned me about scarring, but nothing prepared me for what I saw afterward. 2 huge, jagged pink scars across my chest. They weren't just physical, they destroyed my self-image. I couldn't look in the mirror. I got rid of them all. I stopped leaving my apartment. I felt sick just seeing myself. Eventually, I went to therapy, and through that process, I was referred to a plastic surgeon. We tried creams. They didn't work. Laser treatment? Too expensive and risky. Finally, implants. I didn't want bigger breasts. I just wanted to feel whole again. I went from an F to a DD. It helped. I started feeling like a human again. And honestly, I didn't care what anyone thought. I was alive, and finally able to look at myself without crying. Fast forward to today. I'm 28 and working in a decent office job. Things are going well. Or at least, they were. Then there's Jill. Jill overheard a conversation between me and a longtime friend about flying with implants. She instantly spread it to the entire office, and from that moment on, she decided to make my chest her favorite joke. Plastic Barbie. Fake in more ways than one. Even sack of silicone. 3 to 4 times a week for 3 months straight. Always in passing, always just loud enough, and always in places with no cameras, like elevators and bathrooms. I asked her to stop, 4 times, always politely, always firmly. She didn't. At first, I tried to ignore it. I figured maybe she'd get bored and stop. But she didn't. It just got worse. Eventually, I started to dread going to work. I would avoid lunchrooms, stay quiet in group meetings, and sit in corners just to avoid drawing attention. One time, she said I had more plastic than a water bottle. Another time, she asked if I beeped going through airport security. She told one coworker I was fake outside and fake inside, and I wasn't the only one who noticed. Several coworkers looked uncomfortable when she made those comments, but no one spoke up. I felt like I was back in high school, surrounded by adults acting like teenagers. I didn't want to go to HR at first. I thought maybe I was being overly sensitive. But there's only so many times you can be called Barbie or silicone queen before you snap. And one day, I did. We were in the lunchroom. There were 6 of us at the table, me, Jill, and 4 other coworkers. Someone mentioned a TV show being shallow, and I casually agreed, saying, "Yeah, some of it feels kind of shallow." That's when Jill turned to me, smirked, and said, "You'd know all about being shallow," while gesturing to my chest. That was it. I was done. I looked at her calmly and said, "Do you know why I have these?" Jill looked confused for a moment. The rest of the table went quiet. A few years ago, doctors found potentially cancerous cells in my breast tissue. I had both my breasts removed. The scars were horrible. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror without crying. My therapist referred me to a plastic surgeon, and I got implants, not because I wanted to be sexy or fake, but because I wanted to stop hating myself every time I saw my reflection. So maybe, just maybe, before you judge someone for how they look, you should ask them why they look that way. Then I picked up my food and left the table. No yelling, no swearing, just facts. For the rest of the day, it was tense. A few coworkers came to me privately to say they supported me. Others avoided eye contact. Some were clearly friends with Jill and didn't want to get involved, but the damage was done. Later that evening, I got an email from HR. Subject line: hostile work environment. Required meeting. I called to ask what it was about. They wouldn't say much, but the person on the other end mentioned the name of the HR rep I was meeting with, Debbie. Debbie, who just so happened to be Jill's friend. That's when I realized Jill had reported me. At that point, I knew I had to protect myself. If Jill was filing a formal complaint, and her friend Debbie was handling it, I needed to be smart. Then I remembered something from my employee contract. There was a clause that said if an employee felt their HR representative might be biased, they had the right to request an impartial overseer. So I dug through my contract, found the paragraph, printed it out, and highlighted the clause. Next, I messaged every coworker who had shown support earlier that day. I said, HR wants to meet with me. Do you remember any of the comments Jill made about me? Would you be willing to write a short statement and sign it? I didn't expect much. Jill was well connected, and people were scared of being on her bad side. But to my surprise, 16 people agreed. They wrote brief, signed statements with what Jill had said when she said it, and why it made them uncomfortable. Some even included extra details. How Jill made fun of another coworker's weight. How she once made an anti-Semitic comment about someone's nose. How she constantly gossiped about people's appearances. By morning, I had a small folder of evidence. Each letter was short, but powerful. I also made a list of people who were in the lunchroom during my confrontation with Jill and a timeline of when I had previously asked her to stop. I printed everything, put it in a folder, and walked into the office the next day ready for war, quietly, professionally, and fully prepared. At 10 a.m., I was called to HR. Debbie stood up and motioned for me to follow her. I looked her in the eye, held up the page from my contract, and said, I'd like to request an impartial overseer. She looked stunned. Excuse me? I pointed to the clause. It's in my contract. I have reason to believe this matter involves someone you're personally close to. I'd prefer a neutral party. She tried to argue, said she could be fair, but I stood firm. Eventually, she left the room and brought in her supervisor. Debbie's supervisor entered the room along with another HR rep. He asked me why I believed Debbie couldn't be impartial. I said calmly, I have it on good authority that she is a personal friend of the person who filed the complaint, Jill. Debbie didn't deny it. She just said, I can be impartial. The supervisor took a deep breath and said, All right, we'll proceed with another HR rep. Now I was sitting at the table with 2 HR staff and Debbie's supervisor. Debbie was there too, but silent, furious. I think she genuinely thought this would be a quick meeting where I got reprimanded or even fired. Instead, I pulled out my folder. They began the questioning. Why do you think Jill filed this complaint? I answered. Because I finally confronted her after 3 months of targeted comments about my appearance. She didn't like being called out. Why didn't you come to HR sooner? Because I didn't think anyone would take it seriously. Jill is popular and well-connected. I tried to resolve it directly. I asked her to stop, repeatedly. What did she say? She kept joking, kept pushing, kept humiliating me. I explained the medical reason for my implants, how I'd survived a mastectomy, lived with severe scars, and eventually got the surgery not for vanity, but for recovery. Then I placed the 16 letters on the table. These are signed statements from coworkers who heard Jill's comments firsthand. Some were present at the lunchroom incident. Others have witnessed ongoing harassment. You'll also see that some letters describe additional offensive behavior Jill has directed at others, including anti-Semitic and body-shaming remarks. They flipped through the papers, reading in silence. Then I handed them a list of names of those present during the lunch conversation and reminded them that the lunchroom had security cameras. The room went quiet. I wasn't smug. I wasn't emotional. I just sat there, calmly and clearly presenting the truth. Debbie didn't say a word. And the supervisor? He simply said, I think we're done here. We'll review everything and follow up. I nodded, thanked them, and left the room. I returned to my desk, heart racing but face calm. I opened my CV just in case, ready to start job hunting, preparing for the worst. But then, something interesting started happening. One by one, my coworkers were called to HR. First, the woman who had been in the lunchroom with us and had written one of the letters. She was gone for about 10 minutes. Then another coworker, and another. Every single person who had written a letter or had been present at lunch got called in. One came back and whispered, "They're asking a lot about what Jill said to you." I told them everything. By mid-afternoon, it was clear that HR was doing a full investigation. They weren't just reading the letters, they were verifying everything. Then, finally, Jill was called in. She strutted toward the HR office like she owned the place, but she didn't come back with the same attitude. She came back furious. Her face was red. She was pacing at her desk, whispering loudly to anyone who would listen. "I can't believe that bitch reported me. She's lying. This is harassment against me." Most people avoided eye contact with her. Then, around 4:30, she was called in again, and this time, she didn't come back. Instead, about 30 minutes later, she stormed into the office, full meltdown. She grabbed her bag, started packing up her desk in a rage, and muttered loudly, "She got me fired! That lying plastic bitch got me fired!" People stared, frozen. No one helped her. No one defended her. She pushed her way into the elevator, slammed the button, and disappeared. A few minutes later, I got an email from HR. "Your case is closed. No further action will be taken against you." That was it. No apology from Debbie, no confrontation from Jill, just silence and the sweet sound of justice. I went home, ordered pizza, and watched a movie. For the first time in months, I actually smiled. It's been a little while now. Jill never tried to reach out. She didn't appeal. She didn't threaten a lawsuit, though I heard she told people she was exploring legal options. No one heard from her again. HR never brought it up with me again either, but I noticed something in the office culture after that. People were quieter, more respectful. Coworkers who had once laughed at Jill's jokes started keeping their distance. A few even came up to me privately and said, "I'm really sorry I didn't say anything sooner. I didn't hold it against them. I get it. It's hard to stand up to someone who's loud and connected. But here's the thing. I didn't want Jill fired. I just wanted her to stop. But she crossed the line, again and again. And when I finally pushed back, she tried to destroy me for it. She thought she had power. She thought HR would side with her. She thought the office would rally around her. But the truth has a funny way of rising to the top. Sometimes it's not the loudest voice that wins. It's the one that refuses to stay silent. And yeah, maybe I didn't play her game the way she expected. But I didn't have to, because I had something better than pettiness. I had evidence. I had allies. I had the truth. And when you've already beaten cancer, office politics don't scare you. Not anymore. Have you ever dealt with a toxic coworker? Share your story in the comments. We read everyone. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more real stories like this.